This podcast is brought to you by India Knowledge at Wharton. Please visit knowledge.wharton.upenn.edu/India for more information.
Inclusive growth, infrastructure development, and collaboration in science and technology were the major themes discussed at the recent Global Partnership Summit organized in Washington, D.C. by the U.S.-India Business Council. Business and political leaders from both countries participated in the event, which also marked the U.S. IBC's 33rd anniversary. India Knowledge at Wharton spoke with business leaders at the event about the challenges they face doing business in a rapidly globalizing economy.
Our guest today is Sunil Mittal, Chairman and Managing Director of the Bharti Group. Mr. Mittal, thank you so much for joining us today.
It's my pleasure.
You started in business in 1976 at age 18 with $1,500 that you borrowed from your father. I believe your first business was making bicycle crankshafts. Could you tell us about your earliest entrepreneurial experiences and what you learned from them?
Well, as you know, I grew up, or I was raised in Ludhiana, a very industrious town, where almost everybody is an entrepreneur of some sort or some kind. And it is the bedrock of small-scale industry. And the principal industry being cycles or cycle parts, hosiery, or yarn to make knitwear, and light engineering items. And coming out of college with that small amount of capital, one could only do what was allowed in the ecosystem there, and I decided to manufacture bicycle parts, in particular crankshafts. It was a hot forging unit that I put up, and that's where I cut my teeth into business.
You moved to Bombay in 1980. At that time, your business plans were a little more ambitious. Could you tell us a little bit more about your business ventures at that time?
Well, I realized that one could probably make some modest success out of what I had started to do in bicycle parts, but there was a limitation. At the end of the day, the manufacturers of bicycles decided how much, at what price you could supply to them, and just making shafts wouldn't have made you a player of any size or scale. So I was very clear that I had to get out of Ludhiana into a much bigger play in Delhi or Mumbai, Bombay at that time. And I spent about 2-3 years in Bombay importing a variety of products, steel, brass, zinc, zip fasteners, plastics, and eventually brought India's first portable generator. And that was the first turning point.
Was that the venture with Suzuki?
It was with Suzuki. And that's how I got in touch with the Japanese, spent 2 to 3 years with them learning their techniques, practices, internationalized my concepts, learned the art of diplomacy and international trade. So I would say that was the period which gave me opportunities to, on one hand, earn some significantly higher amounts of money than I could have done in cycle trade. And more importantly, gave me that independence and experience of marketing, brands, international trade. And that held me in good stead later on.
What were the main lessons you learned at that point of your career?
I think 2 or 3 things. I realized very early on that you need to tie up with some large entities, much larger than yourself. And if you see from there on, the string of partnerships are all with very large companies, multi-billion-dollar corporations. So Suzuki, AT&T, Siemens, Lucky Gold Star at that time now, LG, and Suzuki Motor Company was there, of course. British Telecom, Telecom Italia. So that is what I followed. Tie up with large companies. And it's easy to say, but large companies intuitively don't, ally with small companies or entrepreneurs. So one had to persuade these large companies, show them the Indian market, your high governance structure despite being a small company, and give them the comfort to join hands with you to exploit and come into the Indian market together.
How did you enter the phone business?
Well, that I would say was a happy stance. In fact, you can call it an accident because the government banned the import of generators. And one fine day there was no business. All the business that I developed was gone. And my beat was Japan, Korea, Taiwan. I went back into those areas looking for a new product. And one of the theories that I built around my entrepreneurship was do things that have not been done before. Because if you're competing with the big boys in areas where they're strong, there was no chance for us to succeed. And in my quest to now look for the next big breakthrough product, which also didn't need too much capital, was met in Taiwan in a trade fair when I saw push-button telephones. And I brought India's first telephone set replacing the rotary phones. And that became a huge success. And my romance with telecom started thereafter. So it went on to cordless phones, answering machines, fax machines, and then India's first mobile phone.
India in those days was such a highly regulated market and an especially challenging environment for somebody who wanted to be innovative. How did you navigate your way around those currents?
Tough, but as an entrepreneur you get trained on everything. You understand import policy, you know customs book, you know excise laws. You practically learn to do everything yourself, and you hit roadblocks, you have difficulties, but I had opened my own LCs, cleared my own consignments, taken the material on trucks myself to the market. So an entrepreneur gets a huge amount of experience, and then you also know how to deal and move into their system. And the good news is that my excellency in the entrepreneurial area truly started happening alongside the breaking down of these barriers. More the barriers dropped, the more we surged. So 92 in that sense was the turning point when the Narasimha Rao government, along with the now Prime Minister Manmohan Singh, then Finance Minister, decided to open up. About 10-20 of us young entrepreneurs really moved in, and each one of us have created a fantastic business out of that.
So in concrete terms, how did the business environment change so that it allowed this entrepreneurial surge to happen?
Telephone manufacturing, completely regulated, what you could import, what you could not import, how much you could manufacture. I got my first industrial license to make cordless telephones. It had a limit of 2 crores of sales. I mean, it's ridiculous when you go back. It's $500,000 today. You could not manufacture more than 2 crores of sales. Now, if you see that number, what does it mean? Subscale operations, small, tiny factory, and you don't manufacture telecom products like that. It's not a small-scale factory that you can put up. And suddenly one day the government said no licenses required. From controlling what you could do, it was gone one day. And that, to my mind, was the first time when the entrepreneurial energies were released into more constructive arena of marketing, branding, doing the right things.
In just about 10 years, you have built Bharti into India's largest mobile operator. How did that come about? And what are some of the main lessons you learned from your experience that could be helpful to other entrepreneurs?
Well, I think very clearly we could have never claimed that we had more capital or better technologies, because everybody was buying the same technology. It's GSM, it's a set standard. We couldn't claim that we had massive brand or distribution strength in the market. The only thing that we needed on our side was speed, and we used that to great effect. We were in the market ahead of competition. We brought new products in the market ahead of competition. We rolled out our networks. We begged, borrowed, stole, put things out. And while they were never near perfect, they were there first. And that gave us, to my mind, a lot of advantage. So our theory was, if you're caught between speed and perfection, always choose speed. And perfection will follow, because we never waited for a perfect positioning, because in business you don't have the time, especially if you're small, you can't do it. And the large companies took their own time. They were months behind us, and that made us pick up a market niche for ourselves, which in turn made us big.
How did you position yourself against your competitors? Was your strategy based entirely on speed, or did you also have other tactics?
No, I think one thing was we were very, very passionate about our business. This was the only business we were doing. And other competitors had other businesses, and this was one of the new businesses they were starting. And speed, new products into the market, close to the customer, knowing what the customer wants. I think we lived that whole space ourselves day in, day out, and that made all the difference.
How do you see Bharti's future in the mobile industry? I know you tried recently to merge with MTN in South Africa, but that merger didn't work out. What were your strategic goals for that merger, and what else might you be considering for the future?
Well, we believe that while India is not done, in as far as rolling out networks, the process is done. We'll keep on adding 2.5, 3 million customers a month until we get to a point where India has 700-800 million customers. Management teams are in place, brand is very strong, distribution is in place, company has no debt. So India is done. Now what does the senior management team do? You have to create new opportunities of growth. And they lie in other emerging markets. They're for Africa, Middle East. And we have today a business model which is the best business model in the world, lowest costs with the highest quality. And I think that model is ready to go out. So we would like to, whenever we get an opportunity like MTN, to seriously attempt for putting some assets together.
Would you look for partners in other parts of the world?
Well, we keep on getting shown opportunities around the globe, and we remain open.
Let's turn now to the retail industry, where you have a partnership with Walmart. Help me understand how you evaluated the retail opportunity and what your thought process was in making the decisions you did.
Well, we wanted to do something more in India. As we grow telecom outside India, I think there are other opportunities in India. And one of them we felt was in the area of retail. And India's retail needs to get organized, and it will one day. It may take its own time, and everything in India does take time. But we will organize the retail to a point where over $100 billion will come through organized retail stores. And we had opportunities to tie up with Carrefour, Tesco's, and Walmart. And in fact, we were almost on the signing stage with Tesco when the Walmart meeting started to happen, and we liked Lee Scott's model. We liked the same low-cost delivery mechanism, values of Sam Walton. So I would say that we are very, very pleased to have entered this area. It has its own issues. Like telecom, this has resistances built in. There are barriers, there are issues. And we enjoy probably dealing with these issues.
Speed was the hallmark of your experience in the mobile industry, but of course the retail market is very, very different. How do you deal with those challenges?
It's frustrating. I think I must confess that it's going much slower than what we originally thought. Speed is still what we like, but this is now a large company. We have tie-up with a large company. They believe that you need to tie up a lot of loose ends before you launch yourself. And the first 3 stores that have opened up in assistance with Walmart demonstrate that planning does make a difference. So we are spending a lot of time planning. It's not wasted time. The supply chain is being built. First distribution center has come up. The 3 stores are having infill rates of 95% and are having sales per square foot of 30-40% higher than the other top 2 or 3 other operators in the country. So start is good. It is surely slow, but I think you'll start seeing some action fairly soon.
Are any political changes needed to make that happen?
Well, FDI must be allowed. We would rather have Walmart right in there with equity rather than providing franchise support from outside. Yes, we would like FDI to open up.
You have been quoted as saying that India needs a football revolution.